Boker Tov on this Erev Yom Kippur day. So this is the third year that I will be reading the book of Jonah together with a Hasidic rabbi to a congregation. It's an honor. It's a blessing. Now, if you've known me for any time, you know that Jonah is my Hebrew name, my middle name. In other words, it's not the original first name that my parents gave me. That's, of course, Bobby, Robert, named after Rose, my father's mother, who I never met, my grandmother I never met. She died when my dad was 18. So Jonah is the name after my mother's grandfather. Excuse me, Jonah. I was named after my mother's grandfather, Joseph, who, of course, I never met. My grandfather on my father's side died on my birthday. So we read the book of Jonah on Yom Kippur, and therefore, in a biblical sense, my grandfather died who died on my birthday, died on the day we read the book of Jonah. Or I'm not quite sure if I've got that exactly right, but there's all these different connections. And then my son was born on Yom Kippur, literally. And while it's not his calendar birthday, because that moves around Yom Kippur, biblically speaking, his birthday is Yom Kippur. So there's just an extraordinary number of connections, I feel, to Yom Kippur for me and the book of Jonah. Now, all my life, I've studied the book of Jonah. As a child in religious school, it would be, pictures and fanciful stories and kind of presented as a children's story. But as you get older, you start to look at the spiritual, religious elements of the story. And then as you start staying at temple, which I've been doing for a long time, I would stay at temple throughout Yom Kippur. Was a way to keep away from the refrigerator, because it is a fast day. And one of the Yom Adin, these fall Yom Adin, we're going to be going to Sukkot soon. Tabernacles, okay, Feast of Tabernacles, Feast of Huts, okay. Oddly enough, we didn't travel through the desert in huts. We traveled in tents. But be it as it may, the Israelites, when they left Egypt, did go from Ramses to Sukkot. That was their first stop. That's where they lived. They stayed in Sukkot. So when they say that we stayed in huts, stayed in Sukkot, which is the word for it, it's true. We did stay in huts. We stayed in what you might call shantytown. We stayed in the city of huts in Sukkot. But Yom Kippur is a day when we read the Haftorah portion from the book of Jonah. And we study that whole book. On Rosh Hashanah, we do Hannah, I believe. Or is it Rachel's Tears? Anyway, the point being is on Yom Kippur, we study the book of Jonah. It's interesting because, it's a book with tremendous meaning. Some people will catch my drift, that there's no greater prophet than Jonah. He certainly might be considered the most successful prophet. I mean, after all, 5 Hebrew words, approximately. It's either 5 or 6. But I think it's 5 Hebrew, 6 English. But either way, possibly the shortest speech ever. And certainly the shortest a prophet gave to a city of Assyrians, Nineveh, a city founded by Nimrod, kind of the arch enemy in the Bible throughout. He declares, he's sent there by God to declare judgment, to say that the city will be overthrown in 40 days. It's a 3-day march across. He gets 1 day in and speaks those famous words, and bam, the entire city repents. So we study this book on the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur, Kippur meaning atonement, Yom Teruah, Rosh Hashanah. Yom Teruah is the day of the blast of the trumpet, the day of judgment, and then we have this question of whether which side of the book you're going to be written in, which book you're going to be written in, the book of life, book of death. What'll be your, how will you go if you're going to go? And we read this book about repentance, or you could say it's also about the 13 attributes of mercy. The attributes, I think, were introduced to those with Moses when God spares the Israelites after the golden calf incident at Sinai. But, here you have at the end of the book, Jonah saying that he knew God would be merciful and, slow to anger and so forth. He essentially repeats the 13 attributes of mercy. He knew God extremely well, is evidenced throughout the book. He wasn't running from God. He was running away from a commandment. He was disobeying an order. You can't. A prophet like Jonah knows there's no place he can hide, not in the hull of a ship. There's no place he could hide, but he could object. He could object to going to a city where he knew what God would do. But when he came out of the water in great thanksgiving after the fish spit him out, I think he really believed he was going there to declare judgment. So who would he be saving if that was the case? Who would Jonah be saving if God really declared judgment? If Jonah was there to declare judgment for God, judgment was rendered and the Assyrians were destroyed, who would he be saving? He'd be saving the Jews. And the Assyrians were the arch enemies. Some years later, the Assyrians would attack Israel. They would wipe out virtually every city until they got to Jerusalem. They would lay siege on Jerusalem. This is during King Hezekiah. So if Jonah was this prophet, maybe he foresaw this, and perhaps he went there after God resurrected him from the water, after his 3 days in the fish, in the great fish, from the pit of Sheol, where he had died. He went down to death, whose death, and essentially, and he looked back and he saw to see the temple, and God heard his prayers. He hadn't forsaken him, and he came back up. He was saved. But who did he go? Who was he? Why was he going to Assyria at that point? To Nineveh at that point? He was convinced he was going there to deliver judgment. God's judgment. In effect, what he believed would happen, he was thinking at that time would happen, he certainly owed his life to God, was that they would forsake their folly, cling to their folly, forsake their welfare, and that they would be destroyed. And if they were destroyed, he was saving the Jews. So Jonah went there first to save the Jews. But what ended up happening? He saved the Gentiles. And he saved the Gentiles when he told them to throw him overboard. The sailors. And the captain. It's the book of Jonah. In fact, the only named characters in the book are Jonah and God. The rest of the characters in the story are unnamed. The captain, no name. The sailors, no names. Nineveh, no names. King, no name. They didn't name the king. Characters, but not names. It's only the name of God. It's only Jonah's name. It's the book of Jonah. It's not the book of Nineveh. Not the book of Ninevites. Not the book of the Assyrians. It's the book of Jonah. It's the story of Jonah. So what we need to learn is we need to learn about Jonah in this story. Spent a long time thinking about Jonah and what he was and what he represents. But let's look at it just from a pure name standpoint. What does Jonah mean? Jonah in Hebrew. Peace, but dove. It means dove. Dove. So God sent the dove. When did God send a dove out before? After Noah, right? What does Jonah mean to the majority of the religious population in this world, which are Christians? The dove is a symbol of the Holy Spirit. Now, you might say, "Oh, that's a Christian thing." No, there's a Holy Spirit in the Torah. So you could say that God sent the Holy Spirit. In sending the dove, Jonah, God was sending the Holy Spirit out. Could it be that's why he had so much ability? In effect, he sent God sent God out to declare judgment. And when God speaks, who listens? The Gentiles listened in this story, didn't they? The sailors, the captain, but most importantly, all the people of Nineveh listened. And when they did, Jonah was deeply angered and sad, so much so that he wanted to die. Now, what did Jonah miss? Because people like to think of it as a story that has a sends a message about Jonah, understandably. I think they somewhat get the wrong message, though. In the end of the story, at the end, ultimately, Jonah did what he was told. God spared him as well. And Jonah achieved with very few words what it's are easy to say nobody else could have achieved. The Assyrians were dominant. So Jonah obeyed. And he was effective. And he was deeply saddened. Shouldn't he have rejoiced that he saved the whole city? Such a great city? No, he didn't, because he didn't know one thing. It's the same thing you and I don't know. Same thing the sailors didn't know. Initially, the sailors just rowed harder, thinking that they could do it. They could get the boat to shore. What Jonah didn't know was God's plan. He knew God's command. He objected to the command because he didn't know the plan. And see, in the military, one of the things that the soldiers learn is that they have to obey the command. Doesn't matter whether they agree with it or disagree with it. They have to obey the command. Why? Because the theory is the soldiers don't know what the generals have planned. And it might even be that they have to give their life for that plan. Well, the Assyrians would play a very important role many decades later at the siege of Jerusalem, when King Hezekiah was trying to essentially survive the siege. He tried to shut off the water supply to the Assyrians, but he also had to ensure his own water supply. So he dug a trench to the city of Jerusalem. He dug a trench that would eventually allow the waters from one of the world's greatest intermittent springs, one of the greatest water supplies on the planet, from deep underground, the spring of Siloam, which has a real important role in the end of days, by the way. That was dug on the siege of Assyrians against Jerusalem. There was also plagues that wiped out many of the Assyrians as they were outside the walls of Jerusalem, and that fortified not the physical city, it fortified the spirits of the Israelites. They knew God was with them when these Assyrians were defeated, not by them, but by God in their minds. Yeah, God had a plan for Jonah that Jonah didn't understand. So he went the other way. He rowed the other way. He went the other way. Some people row harder. But at the end of the day, in some ways we have to surrender to God's plan, or accept that God has a plan, even if it deeply saddens us. This is a day of atonement, day of repentance. Jonah's a great book for that, because look at the power of repentance. It saved the city. It saved the great city of Nineveh. There's so much more to this book. I could go on for hours. There's so much more to this book, but that's all for today. Fast easy if you're fasting. I wish that you be written in the book of life. And have a sweet, healthy new year. Good Yom Tov.